Hey guys, welcome back to my second episode where I compare two console versions of the same game. Today we're going to be looking at a popular arcade title called Pit Fighter, which was one of the first games to use like a blue screen with digitized characters, and they ported it over to the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. This was an all-time favorite game of mine in the arcades, and I rented the Super Nintendo version to be completely disappointed. And now that I could take a look at both of the games right now, there's a huge difference between these two. Already we're going to start off with the Sega Genesis intro, which you can see right here, and it mimics the arcade version really good. There's even some full motion video. Shows a little bit of gameplay, and now let's look at the Super Nintendo version. Bam, that's it, a title screen. Now, off the bat, you can already tell that the Sega Genesis version is a lot better. They ported it pretty close to the arcade, considering the time when they came out. Now, as you can see, both versions right here, they both kind of resemble the arcade. The sprites are a little bit smaller, and it's lacking in color as well. Now, we're going to get right to the differences here. When I was a child, I only had the Super Nintendo version, and when I used to go like across the states to visit my cousins and stuff, I would always stop by like one of the truck stops and play an arcade game, and the majority of them would have the Pit Fighter arcade. And back in the day, I used to love it because it was gritty, it was like dark, and this game was just intense. And you could use weapons, and the crowd pushes you and tries to stab you. It's just awesome as a child. And when I heard that it came out to the home consoles, I went right to the video store and rented it for my Super Nintendo, only to be really disappointed in how it turned out. Now, I didn't know that the Genesis version was completely different from this. I only grew up with the Super Nintendo version, and now that I played the Sega Genesis version, wow, am I impressed. First of all, as you can see, the differences right here. The Super Nintendo one does not have the full cast of characters. They repeat more of them than the Sega Genesis version. I know later on in the stages you see like reoccurring characters, but for instance, the guy with the purple shirt here, I forget his name, he does not appear in the Super Nintendo version. Also, when the execution guy like kind of taunts you or just tells you just wait and blah blah between certain matches, the Super Nintendo version shows this tiny little non-intimidating sprite which makes you kind of laugh, and he just says the same thing every time, just wait. While the Sega Genesis version shows this giant picture of him, and he's just scary. Like you could see there, the Super Nintendo version was just ugly. Also too, when you win, it's kind of weird that even though it's like the Super Nintendo's a superior console, yet it doesn't even show the stupid little money that piles up underneath you when that crane is lifting you. So it's kind of pointless to even show that in the Super Nintendo version when it just looks stupid. It's just a crane raising you up for no apparent reason and people cheering you on. Another thing I want to look at too is the Super Nintendo version does not contain any weapons whatsoever, which takes away a lot of the fun in the game. Like, what's not more fun than lifting up a motorcycle or, you know, bashing a person over the head with a stool? And also too, the Super Nintendo version does not have characters come out and try to hit you, which the second version definitely has. Now, the Sega Genesis version doesn't have as big as sprites, and the graphics don't look as good, but it has all the sound effects, actually has different soundtracks, and different backgrounds. Well, the Super Nintendo has has a couple different ones as well, but not the variety that the Sega Genesis version provides, which makes the Sega Genesis version a hell of a lot better. The gameplay as well, the Sega Genesis version just plays phenomenal. It's actually responsive and fun, and you can actually pull off different moves. The Super Nintendo version is really clunky with its controls. And also too, I find the AI is extremely tough in the Super Nintendo version. Maybe that's because there's no options menu too. They both support 2 players, but the Sega Genesis version has an option menu which gives you different difficulties, more lives, and like a sound edit mode. With the Super Nintendo version, you just play it and that's it. Also, the Sega Genesis version makes it a little bit more fun because you actually get to continue off when you die. You have a certain amount of set of lives just to make it all the way through the end. The Super Nintendo version, once you're dead, that's it. Once your experience goes to 0, it's game over, which makes that game extremely tough. You don't know how many times it took me to get to at least the 3rd or 4th guy when I was playing this game. It was just utter hell. And as you can see, if I had a Sega Genesis back in the day, I would have been so happy with this port that the Genesis have. Now, there's one thing that the Genesis version does not have over the Super Nintendo one, and that's these special powers you get for each individual character, and you press the L and R buttons. And what that does is the indicator flashes, and that's when you can execute it, because you only get a certain amount per round. I think you gain an extra 1 every round you win, and it's pretty much useless. It's stupid, hard to pull off. I tried it when I read it on like the internet how to do them. Wasn't that fun at all. Also, too, the Super Nintendo version is missing like the screams and grunts that you get out of the Sega Genesis version when you win and stuff like that, and like the triumph music. I'm just very disappointed what they did in the Super Nintendo version, and I kind of wish that I had Genesis back in the day. Even though I do prefer the Super Nintendo when I was a child, this definitely upset me. I hope you guys enjoyed the second episode. Stay tuned from the third, and just watch the ending credits until then. Take care.